My daughter told her fiancé's family I was an embarrassing nobody who can't afford anything. But when the caterer said their $31,000 payment never cleared, the room went silent as they read the name on file, mine. And then they learned the worst part. The card had been canceled by me that morning. Before we get into it, don't forget to like and subscribe, and hit hype to boost this episode. Drop a comment below with your city or country. I'm always curious where viewers are joining from. I've never been the kind of father who needed recognition or praise. I worked quietly, saved diligently, and made sure my daughter Emma had every opportunity I never did. Private school, college tuition paid in full, a car for her 16th birthday, a down payment on her first apartment. Whatever she needed, I provided. Not because I expected gratitude, but because that's what fathers do. But standing in the hallway of the Sterling Heights Country Club on a Tuesday evening, listening to my only child tell her future in-laws that I was an embarrassing nobody who can't afford anything, I realized that everything I thought I knew about our relationship was a fiction I'd been telling myself for years. My name is Richard Holloway. I'm 56 years old. I've worked as a regional operations manager for a logistics company for 32 years, climbing from warehouse floor worker to senior management through sheer persistence and competence. I'm not wealthy by country club standards, but I'm comfortable. Very comfortable. Comfortable enough to have paid for my daughter's entire wedding, a $127,000 event that she'd planned with the assumption that I would cover every expense without question or complaint, and I had been planning to do exactly that, until I heard what she really thought of me. The Sterling Heights Country Club was hosting the rehearsal dinner for Emma's wedding to Brandon Whitmore, son of James and Victoria Whitmore, a couple whose wealth came from commercial real estate investments and whose social standing came from making sure everyone knew about those investments. The Whitmores were everything I wasn't: polished, connected, comfortable in rooms where the cheapest bottle of wine cost more than most people's car payments. I had arrived early for the dinner, as was my habit. Better to be 15 minutes early than 1 minute late. A lesson I'd learned from my father and tried to pass on to Emma, though she'd clearly decided punctuality was for people who couldn't afford to keep others waiting. The club was beautiful in that understated way that only truly expensive places manage. No flashy gold fixtures or obvious displays of wealth, just perfectly maintained everything. Lawns like golf course greens, flower arrangements that probably cost more than my monthly mortgage payment, staff who moved with the quiet efficiency of people who were paid very well to be invisible. I'd been heading toward the private dining room where the rehearsal dinner was scheduled when I heard voices from the adjacent parlor. One of those voices was Emma's, distinctive with the slight vocal fry she'd developed in college and never lost. I should have kept walking. Should have announced my presence. Should have done anything except stop in that hallway and listen. But I stopped, and I listened. "Will your father be attending the rehearsal?" That was Victoria Whitmore's voice, polished and precise, with just a hint of condescension that suggested she already knew the answer and wasn't impressed by it. Emma laughed. Not her real laugh, the one I remembered from when she was young, genuine, and unself-conscious. This was her social laugh, the one she used at parties and networking events, designed to signal amusement without actually expressing joy. "God, no," Emma said. "He's an embarrassing nobody. He still wears the same navy suit from my middle school recital, like from 15 years ago. He can't afford anything new. Honestly, we've been pretending he's not really part of the wedding, just letting him think he's involved so he doesn't cause drama." The words hit me like physical blows, each one precise, calculated, devastating. "That sounds difficult for you," Victoria replied, her tone suggesting sympathy that was really just well-mannered curiosity. "It is," Emma continued, warming to her subject now, probably encouraged by Victoria's attention. "He'll try to act generous at the rehearsal dinner, like he's contributing something meaningful. But trust me, the man can't even pay for groceries half the time. I once had to loan him money for gas." Can you imagine? Thank God Brandon's family understands what real success looks like. Someone else laughed. James Whitmore, probably, or maybe Brandon himself. I couldn't tell through the roaring in my ears, through the sudden, crystalline clarity that was replacing the comfortable delusions I'd been living with. My daughter thought I was poor, thought I was an embarrassment, thought I couldn't afford groceries. The same daughter whose college tuition I'd paid, all $240,000 of it, at a private university she'd insisted on attending because the state school was beneath her. The same daughter whose apartment I'd helped furnish, whose car insurance I still paid, whose credit card bills I'd covered more times than I could count when she miscalculated her budget. The same daughter whose wedding I was financing in its entirety because she and Brandon wanted to start their marriage without debt. I stood in that hallway for another 5 minutes, listening as the conversation moved to other topics. The wedding flowers, the honeymoon in Santorini, the house Brandon's parents were buying them as a wedding gift. Emma's voice was animated, excited, fully engaged in a way I rarely heard it when she talked to me. When I finally walked away, moving quietly so no one would know I'd been there, I wasn't angry. Not yet. I was something worse than angry. I was done. I didn't go to the rehearsal dinner. I didn't even manage to pretend I might go. My body moved on autopilot the moment I stepped outside the Whitmores' estate, my feet carrying me to my car, my hands unlocking the door, my mind sinking into a kind of stunned, echoing quiet that felt like someone had turned down the volume of the world. I got in, closed the door, and for a long moment, I simply sat there, gripping the steering wheel, listening to the faint ticking of the cooling engine and the muffled, distant noise of the party inside, the laughter, the clinking glasses, the polite upper-class hum that I was supposed to blend into but clearly didn't. Emma's voice kept drifting through my memory in sharp, cruel fragments. Not the tone she used when she was stressed, not the slightly impatient tone she got in college, not the sarcastic tone she used with friends. No, this had been different. Dismissive, effortless, confident, almost proud. As if mocking me made her feel like she belonged more deeply to the Whitmore world. He's an embarrassing nobody. Those 4 words repeated like a pulse inside my skull. Not shouted, not spat, not emotional. Worse, spoken lightly, casually, tossed out like an obvious truth. A truth she assumed everyone around her already knew, already believed, already accepted. It was the ease of it that hurt. I finally started the car. The headlights washed over the manicured hedges, the pristine stone driveway, the expensive cars parked in perfect rows. Vehicles worth 5, 6, 7 times mine. Cars driven by people Emma respected by default, simply because of the logos on their grills. I drove away without looking back. The farther I got from the estate, the quieter the night became. The streets began emptying of traffic, the houses grew smaller, the lawns less groomed. Each passing block pulled me farther from the world where my daughter lived now, or thought she did, until finally I turned into my own neighborhood, modest and quiet, with streetlights that flickered sometimes and neighbors who said hello without measuring the value of your clothes. I pulled into my driveway and parked, but didn't get out immediately. The house looked exactly the same as it always had, small, familiar, worn in all the places a house becomes worn after decades of real life. The porch light flickered once, then steadied. The curtains in the living room hung slightly crooked the way they always did. A familiar comfort. Tonight, though, it felt like a stranger. I texted her before walking inside. Work emergency, can't make the dinner. A lie so simple it almost felt insulting. A lie I'd used before, a lie she had believed before, a lie she barely reacted to now. Her response came instantly. Just that. Not a word. Not even fake concern. Not even the obligatory, socially conditioned everything okay. Just a thumbs up. The final punctuation mark on a sentence she hadn't realized she'd begun writing years ago. You don't matter enough for me to react. I stood in the hallway for a long moment after walking inside, the silence louder than anything I'd heard at the Whitmores. I could hear the refrigerator humming from the kitchen, the furnace clicking as it kicked on, the faint buzz of the old wall clock. Ordinary sounds, domestic sounds, the soundtrack of a life lived simply, a life she now thought was shameful. I walked to my study without consciously deciding to. My study, my sanctuary. The room Emma used to burst into at age 6 with drawings in her hands, demanding I hang them on the corkboard above my desk. The room where she used to sit on my lap while I worked, swinging her legs and asking questions about spreadsheets I pretended were interesting. I opened the door. The smell hit me first. Paper, dust, old wood, the faint lingering scent of the coffee I spilled last week and thought I'd cleaned properly. The walls were lined with books I'd spent years collecting, books about business, psychology, history, biographies of people who built their lives through discipline, not flash. My lifetime tucked onto shelves. The desk stood exactly where it always had, solid oak, dented, chipped, heavy. I ran my hand along its edge. I remembered buying it the year Emma was born. $50 at a garage sale. An old man with trembling hands had told me, "This thing'll outlast you." He laughed. I laughed. Neither of us knew it would outlast far more than material years. It had survived my marriage. It had survived every financial storm. It had survived every stage of Emma's childhood. It now sat in a house where she no longer saw value in anything that wasn't glittering. I sat down and opened my laptop. The login screen glowed in the dim room. I typed in the password, and for a brief second, the loading circle spun, reflected faintly in my glasses. Then the numbers appeared. Checking. 47,384, Savings, 312,576. Investments, 247, 293. Our retirement, 923, 441. Home equity, $380,000. Total, $3.5 million. I stared at those numbers for a long time, not to admire them, not to boast privately, but to absorb the staggering contrast between reality and my daughter's perception. I had never flaunted money. I had never advertised wealth. I had never made a show of what I earned. I lived in the same house for 25 years. I drove a 7-year-old Honda with a dent on the side. I wore the same suit to every work function. I bought generic brand everything unless quality truly mattered. I did these things because I believed in discipline, because I valued reliability, because I cared more about security than spectacle. Emma had interpreted frugality as failure. She had interpreted humility as humiliation. She had reinterpreted everything I built as evidence that I built nothing. And she didn't just think it privately, she announced it publicly. The spreadsheet icon on my desktop blinked as if calling me. I clicked it. The wedding expense tracker opened. Months of planning compressed into rows and columns, meticulous lists, color-coded deadlines, little notes from me like confirm deposit and call vendor Wednesday. 8 months of work, 8 months of effort, 8 months of quiet financial bleeding I never complained about. Venue deposit, $15,000. Paid final venue payment, $28,000. Scheduled catering deposit, $8,000. Paid final catering payment, $31,000. Pending photography, $12,000. Paid videography, $8,500. Paid dress, $6,800. Paid by me because she couldn't cover it. Planner, $11,500. Paid DJ, $4,200. Paid flowers, $9,200. Deposit paid everything, every detail, every debt, my hands, my money, my sacrifices. Paid by the embarrassing nobody. I opened the caterer's email again, read it slowly, twice, 3 times. Your final payment of $31,000 will be processed automatically. Automatically, quietly, without anyone noticing, without anyone thanking me. Just a silent, invisible transaction, like every contribution I'd made for years. I leaned back and closed my eyes for a moment. My heartbeat felt slow, heavy, deliberate. The room around me seemed to tighten, like the air itself was weighing my shoulders down. Then I reached for my phone. I scrolled to Tom's name. My financial advisor for 15 years. One of the few people who knew the full picture of my finances. A man who had seen me through good markets, bad markets, a divorce, a recession, a promotion, a firing, and everything in between. I called. He picked up on the second ring. Richard, big week. How are you holding up? I spoke calmly. Tom, I need you to cancel the credit card ending in 4782. There was a small pause, barely a second, but enough. That's the wedding card, isn't it? Yes. If you cancel it, the catering charge. I know. Another pause. Longer this time. Tom wasn't nosy, but he wasn't blind either. Something happened. Just cancel it, tonight, and send me documentation. Time-stamped, detailed. All right, I'll get it done. I hung up and stared at the wedding folder Emma had shared with me months ago. Viewer only. How symbolic, how poetic, how painfully appropriate. She let me look at the plans she built with my money, but not touch them, not influence them, not participate, just fund them. I clicked through the files again. The floral design board, the seating chart that placed me behind distant relatives, the timeline that mentioned mother-daughter moment, but nothing for me. The planning checklist with her notes to herself and none referring to me. It had been right in front of me the whole time. I just didn't want to see it. My phone buzzed. Tom. Card canceled at 9:14 p.m. Documentation attached. I opened the PDF. Official letterhead, clear language, a timestamp, a finality. I felt steady. Not gleeful, not vengeful, not triumphant. Just steady. Finally aligned with reality instead of fantasy. I closed the laptop, turned off the desk lamp, and walked through the dim hallway. The photos on the wall watched me. Emma at 6, holding my hand. Emma at 12, hugging me after her recital. Emma at 17, looking embarrassed to stand next to me in an old suit. In every picture, I loved her more than anything. In none of them did she look at me the way she did today. I turned off the hallway light and went to my room. I lay down slowly, feeling the weight leave my chest. Not because I was proud of what I'd done, but because for the first time in a very long time, I had stopped lying to myself about who she had become. She didn't see me, she didn't value me, she didn't respect me, and acting like she did had exhausted me for years. I closed my eyes. The house hummed softly around me. I inhaled deeply. exhaled slowly, felt the steady rhythm of my own breathing, full and quiet and clean. No guilt came, no dread, no fear. Just a clarity I hadn't felt since before the divorce, a clarity that didn't feel cruel, only honest. I slept that night without tossing, without grinding my teeth, without waking in the middle of the night replaying the day, without imagining ways the wedding might bring us closer. I slept like a man who had finally accepted the truth, and the truth, as harsh as it was, felt lighter than the illusion I'd been carrying for years. I didn't hear from Emma the next day. No call, no text, no follow-up about my supposed work emergency. In years past, that might have hurt. Now it just confirmed what I already knew. My presence in her life was purely transactional. I went to work as usual, sat through meetings and reviewed reports, and made decisions that affected hundreds of people's livelihoods. At lunch, I drove past Sterling Heights Country Club and saw wedding prep activity. Staff carrying in enormous floral arrangements, what looked like tables being set up in the ballroom, all the machinery of an expensive celebration grinding into motion, all of it funded by the embarrassing nobody. I got a call that afternoon from Janet Morrison, Emma's wedding planner. Her voice was bright and professional, the kind of forced cheerfulness that came from dealing with demanding clients and their even more demanding families. Mr. Holloway, just checking in before the big day. Everything is progressing beautifully. The final vendor payments are processing this week, and we're all set for Saturday's ceremony. That's good to hear, Janet. I wanted to thank you personally for your flexibility throughout this process. I know Emma has had some very specific visions, and you've been wonderfully accommodating in making sure she gets everything she wants. Accommodating. That was one word for it. Invisible ATM was another. I just want my daughter to be happy, I said, and meant it. I did want Emma to be happy. I just no longer believed that happiness had anything to do with me being in her life. Well, you're certainly ensuring that. The reception is going to be absolutely spectacular. That catering package alone, I've never seen anything quite like it for a wedding this size. You're very generous. Thank you, Janet. After we hung up, I wondered how long it would take her to realize that the catering package wasn't going to happen. Would she learn Friday when the charge declined? Saturday morning when the caterer called in a panic? Or Saturday afternoon at the rehearsal dinner when everything fell apart publicly? I didn't have to wonder long. The rehearsal dinner was scheduled for Friday evening at 6:00 p.m., a more intimate affair with just the wedding party, immediate family, and out-of-town guests. Still 70 people, still at Sterling Heights, still expensive enough to make most people's eyes water. Emma had texted me Friday morning. Rehearsal dinner at 6? Don't be late, Dad. And please wear something presentable. Presentable? Coming from the daughter who thought I couldn't afford groceries. I arrived at Sterling Heights at 5:45 p.m., wearing the same navy suit Emma had mocked. It was a good suit, well-maintained, professionally cleaned and pressed. It had cost $800 when I bought it 15 years ago, a significant investment for a man supporting a child on a single income. I'd taken care of it, and it had taken care of me, and I saw no reason to replace something that still functioned perfectly. But Emma didn't see timeless quality. She saw old, outdated, embarrassing. The private dining room was already filling with guests when I entered. The Whitmores were holding court near the windows, James in what was probably a $5,000 suit, Victoria in a dress that cost more than my monthly mortgage. Brandon was laughing at something his father said, looking relaxed and confident in the way only people who've never worried about money can look. Emma stood near the bar, wearing a dress I didn't recognize but assumed cost at least $1,500. Her hair was styled in complicated waves that had probably required a 3-hour salon appointment. She looked beautiful, sophisticated, every inch the successful young woman about to marry into wealth. When she saw me, her expression flickered, brief annoyance quickly masked by a smile that didn't reach her eyes. She crossed the room, her heels clicking on the polished floor. "Dad, you made it." She kissed my cheek quickly, perfunctorily, already looking past me to see who else had arrived. "I said I would be here. And you wore the navy suit?" Her voice was light, teasing to anyone who might be listening, but I heard the edge underneath, the embarrassment. Classic Dad. "It served me well," I said simply. "Right. Well, mingle. Have a drink. Try not to—" She stopped herself, but I knew how that sentence ended. "Try not to embarrass me. Try not to say anything that reveals you're not like these people. Try not to remind everyone that I came from you. I got a drink from the bar, whiskey, neat, and found a quiet corner where I could observe without participating. I watched Emma work the room, laughing and chatting, perfectly at home in a way I'd never seen her be at home with me. I watched the Whitmores accept congratulations and well wishes from guests as if they'd personally arranged everything about this wedding. I watched people who didn't know me and had no interest in knowing me celebrate an event I'd paid for entirely. At 6:30, Janet Morrison approached the Whitmores and Emma, pulling them aside for what looked like a serious conversation. I couldn't hear what was said, but I saw Emma's face change, saw her shake her head emphatically, saw her pull out her phone to make a call. Then, at 6:47 p.m., a woman I recognized as the head caterer from Sterling Heights entered the dining room. She was trying to be discreet, but her worried expression and the way she clutched her tablet suggested this wasn't a social visit. She approached Emma, whispered something. Emma's face went pale. The caterer spoke louder now, loud enough that nearby conversations stopped, heads turned. "I'm sorry, Ms. Holloway, but the final payment of $31,000 for tomorrow's reception hasn't processed. The card we have on file was declined." The room didn't go silent all at once. It was more like a wave, spreading outward from Emma and the caterer, conversations dying as people realized something was wrong, turned to watch. Emma's voice came out strangled. "That's impossible. It's scheduled to process automatically. There must be some mistake." The caterer consulted her tablet. "The card on file belongs to Richard Holloway, father of the bride." Her eyes scanned the room and landed on me. "Is that you, sir?" Every head in the room turned to look at me. 70 pairs of eyes suddenly focused on the embarrassing nobody in the corner with his old suit and his whiskey. I raised my hand slightly. "That's me." The caterer looked relieved to have found me, probably assuming this was just some technical issue I'd resolve immediately. "Mr. Holloway, there seems to be a problem with your card. The charge was declined. Do you have an alternate form of payment, or should we try running it again?" I took a sip of my whiskey, buying time, letting the silence stretch. Then I set down my glass and spoke clearly, calmly, loud enough for everyone to hear. "No, there's no mistake. The card was canceled." Emma's voice cut through the silence, shrill with panic. "What? Dad, what are you talking about? Why would you cancel it?" "I canceled it at 9:14 a.m. this morning," I said. I pulled out my phone, pulled up Tom's email with the timestamp documentation, and showed it to the caterer. "See? Official bank confirmation. Card deactivated at 9:14 a.m. by my request." The caterer looked confused, probably wondering if she'd stumbled into some kind of family dispute she had no business being part of. I see. Mr. Holloway, I'm not sure what to do here. We need that payment to proceed with tomorrow's service. The food has been ordered, staff have been scheduled." "I understand," I said. "That sounds like a problem you'll need to discuss with my daughter." Emma was staring at me with an expression I'd never seen before. Shock and confusion and dawning horror as she began to realize this wasn't a mistake or a technical glitch. Victoria Whitmore materialized at Emma's elbow, her voice sharp. "Richard, what is the meaning of this? Emma said you were handling the catering costs." "I was," I agreed, "but I've reconsidered." "You've reconsidered?" Victoria's voice rose. 3 days before the wedding? After everything has been ordered and prepared? "Actually, I reconsidered yesterday. The card was canceled yesterday evening. You're just finding out about it today." Emma found her voice, though it came out broken, desperate. "Dad, I don't understand. Why would you do this? You know how important this wedding is. You know we're counting on you." "Am I?" I asked. "Because 2 days ago, I overheard you telling the Whitmores that I was an embarrassing nobody who can't afford anything. That I wear the same old suit because I'm too poor to buy new clothes. That I can't even pay for groceries half the time. That you're pretending I'm not really part of the wedding because I'm such an embarrassment." The room went from silent to absolutely frozen. No one moved, no one breathed. Everyone stared at Emma, whose face had gone from pale to bright red. Dad, I didn't mean..." She looked around at all the watching faces, at the Whitmores whose expressions had shifted from confusion to something colder. "I was just joking. You know how I joke." "Do I?" I asked. "Because it didn't sound like a joke when you said it. It sounded like you genuinely believed I was poor. Genuinely believed I was a burden you were tolerating. Genuinely believed I had nothing to offer except money you assumed I didn't have." Brandon stepped forward, his hand on Emma's shoulder. "Mr. Holloway, I'm sure there's been a misunderstanding. Emma speaks very highly of you." "Does she?" I looked at him directly. "Were you there when she told your parents I couldn't afford groceries? When she told them I was an embarrassing nobody?" "Because I was there. I heard every word." Emma was crying now, mascara starting to run, her carefully constructed appearance beginning to crack. "Dad, please, can we talk about this privately? Not here, not in front of everyone." "Why not here?" I asked. "You were comfortable mocking me in front of everyone. You were comfortable accepting my money while telling people I didn't have any. Why shouldn't everyone hear the truth?" James Whitmore cleared his throat. "Perhaps we should all take a moment to calm down. I'm sure this can be resolved." "There's nothing to resolve," I interrupted. "I've decided I no longer wish to fund a wedding where I'm treated as an embarrassing necessity to be hidden. If Emma wants the catering, someone else can pay for it." The caterer, clearly wishing she were anywhere else, spoke up tentatively. "I hate to press, but we really do need confirmation of payment by tomorrow morning at the latest. The food has been ordered from our suppliers. If the wedding proceeds without payment, we'll need to take legal action." Emma turned to Brandon, desperation clear in her voice. "Can your parents cover it? Just temporarily? We'll pay them back." Brandon looked at his father, who was regarding Emma with an expression that suggested he was rapidly reassessing everything he thought he knew about his future daughter-in-law. "That's a significant sum to cover with less than 24 hours' notice," James said carefully. "We'd need to discuss it." "Please," Emma begged. "Please, we can't cancel the catering. The whole reception will be ruined." I watched this scene play out with a strange detachment. This was my daughter, the little girl I'd raised alone after her mother left, the child I'd read bedtime stories to and taught to ride a bike and helped with homework late into the night. And she was begging her future in-laws to save her from the consequences of treating me like garbage. Victoria Whitmore spoke up, her voice cold. "Emma dear, when you told us your father couldn't afford anything, were you lying? Or were you simply ignorant of his financial situation?" Emma opened her mouth, closed it, opened it again. I thought he lives so modestly. He never spends money on himself. I just assumed—" "You assumed wrong," Victoria said, "which calls into question what else you might have been wrong about." The temperature in the room had dropped about 20 degrees. The Whitmores were looking at Emma like she was a stranger, someone who'd misrepresented herself, someone who couldn't be trusted. Brandon's voice was quiet but strained. "Emma, how much of the wedding has your father been paying for?" Emma didn't answer. She was looking at me, tears streaming down her face, silently begging me to rescue her, to fix this, to make it all go away. I answered for her. All of it. The venue, the photographer, the videographer, the flowers, the dress, the entertainment. Approximately $127,000 total. I was scheduled to pay the final installments this week. $127,000, James repeated slowly. That's quite substantial. "And you told us he couldn't afford groceries," Victoria added, her tone now openly disgusted. Emma was fully sobbing now, her voice breaking. "I made a mistake. I said stupid things. I'm sorry, okay? I'm sorry. Dad, please don't ruin my wedding because I said some stupid things. Please." I looked at my daughter, at the woman she'd become, so focused on impressing others that she'd forgotten who had actually supported her, actually sacrificed for her, actually loved her, and I felt nothing but sadness. "I'm not ruining your wedding, Emma. You did that yourself when you decided I was embarrassing, when you decided my love and generosity were things to mock rather than appreciate. I'm just declining to keep funding my own humiliation." "Mr. Holloway," the caterer interjected, clearly desperate to resolve this before it got even worse. "Is there anything we can do to help facilitate a solution here?" "That depends," I said. "Emma, did you want to apologize? Genuinely, not just because you need my money?" She nodded frantically. Yes, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I never should have said those things. You're not embarrassing. You're not a nobody. You're my dad, and I love you, and I'm sorry." The words were right, but they came out desperate, transactional, said because she needed something rather than because she meant them. I shook my head slowly. "No, you're not sorry for what you said. You're sorry you got caught. You're sorry it's affecting your wedding, but you're not sorry for how you've treated me." "That's not true. Isn't it? Emma, when was the last time you called me just to talk? When was the last time you asked about my life, my job, my well-being? When was the last time you thanked me for anything I've provided?" She opened her mouth, but nothing came out. Because we both knew the answer. Never. Or close enough to never that the difference didn't matter. "You want to know the sad part?" I continued. "I would have given you everything. The wedding, the house, whatever you needed. All you had to do was treat me with basic respect. Basic human decency. But you couldn't even do that. You had to mock me. You had to make me the punchline of your jokes to impress people who don't actually care about you." "They do care," Emma insisted weakly. "Do they?" I gestured at the Whitmores, whose expressions ranged from uncomfortable to openly hostile. "Because they look like they're wondering what else you've lied to them about." Brandon finally spoke, his voice tight. "Emma, We need to talk. Privately. Now. He took her arm and pulled her toward the door. Emma looked back at me one more time, her face desperate, mascara streaked, the image of her perfect wedding dissolving in real time. Then they were gone, and the room erupted into conversation, shocked whispers, speculative gossip, the social vultures already picking apart what they'd just witnessed. I finished my whiskey, set down the glass, and walked toward the exit. Janet Morrison intercepted me. "Mr. Holloway, I don't know what to say. This is highly irregular." "I'm sure it is. You'll want to contact Emma about finalizing payments for any remaining vendor commitments. I'll be covering nothing further. But the final venue payment is due tomorrow, and the flowers, and the—" "Not my problem," I said, not unkindly. "I'm no longer financing this wedding. Emma and her future husband will need to make other arrangements." I walked out of Sterling Heights Country Club feeling lighter than I had in years. Behind me, I could hear the chaos continuing, raised voices, angry accusations, the sound of a carefully planned event imploding. My daughter's perfect wedding was falling apart, and for the first time in a very long time, I was at peace with the decision I'd made. Because sometimes love means knowing when to stop saving someone from themselves. And sometimes the kindest thing you can do is step back and let consequences be the teacher you could never be. I woke up Saturday morning to 47 missed calls and 62 text messages. I made coffee, sat on my back deck watching the sunrise, and finally started reading through them. From Emma, sent at 11:47 p.m. "Dad, please call me. Please, we can fix this." From Emma, 12:03 a.m. "The Whitmores are furious. Brandon's parents are threatening to pull out of the wedding. Please just reinstate the payment." From Emma, 12:34 a.m. "I know I hurt you. I know I said terrible things, but this is my wedding, my one day. Please don't ruin it." From Emma, 1:15 a.m. "How can you do this to me? Your own daughter? What kind of father are you?" The texts continued in that vein for hours. Desperate pleas, angry accusations, attempts at manipulation, promises to change, threats of permanent estrangement. There were also messages from numbers I didn't recognize, probably wedding guests who'd gotten my contact information and felt entitled to weigh in on family drama that was none of their business. I deleted them all without responding. Around 9:00 a.m., my phone rang. Tom Chen, my financial advisor. "Richard, I've been getting calls from people claiming to be your daughter's wedding planner, asking if there's any way to reverse the card cancellation. I told them I can't discuss client information, but I wanted to give you a heads up." "Thanks, Tom. Don't reverse anything. Don't process any charges. My decision stands." "Understood. How are you holding up?" "Surprisingly well." "Good. For what it's worth, I think you made the right call. No one should tolerate that level of disrespect, family or not." After we hung up, I thought about what Tom said, family or not, as if family somehow made disrespect more acceptable, more something to be endured. But it didn't. If anything, family should mean higher standards of respect, not lower. Family should mean you treat each other with kindness, not because you have to, but because you genuinely care. Emma had forgotten that, or maybe she'd never learned it. At 10:30 a.m., someone knocked on my door. I looked through the peephole and saw Brandon standing on my front porch, still in what looked like yesterday's clothes, his hair disheveled, his face exhausted. I considered not answering, considered letting him stand there and knock until he gave up and left. But curiosity got the better of me. I opened the door. "Brandon." "Mr. Holloway, can I come in, please? Just 5 minutes." I stepped aside and let him enter. He stood in my living room looking around with obvious surprise, taking in the comfortable furniture, the well-maintained home, the subtle signs of someone who lived modestly by choice rather than necessity. "I owe you an apology," he said without preamble. "I should have shut down that conversation when Emma was talking about you to my parents. I knew it was wrong, I knew it was cruel, but I didn't say anything because—" He trailed off, shrugged helplessly. "Because it was easier not to." "Why are you here, Brandon?" "To ask you to reconsider, not for Emma, she made her choices, but for me, for our relationship going forward. I love your daughter, Mr. Holloway. Despite what happened yesterday, despite everything that's come out, I still want to marry her, but I can't do that if it means permanently destroying her relationship with you. That's between Emma and me. I know, but I'm asking anyway." He sat down uninvited, looking up at me with genuine distress. "My parents are livid. They're saying Emma misrepresented herself, that she's not the kind of person they want in our family. They're threatening to cut off the house gift, to distance themselves from us. And Emma is—" He paused, choosing words carefully. "Emma is having a breakdown. She's been crying for 8 hours straight. She can't process what happened. She can't process that actions have consequences, I corrected. Maybe, probably. But Mr. Holloway, she's still your daughter, and this is still her wedding day. Can you really let it fall apart completely? Can you really live with knowing you had the power to save it and chose not to? It was a good question, a fair question, and I already knew my answer. Yes, I said simply. I can live with that. Because, Brandon, this isn't about the money. It's not even about the wedding. This is about the fact that my daughter genuinely believes I'm worthless except as a source of funding. She's embarrassed by me. She thinks I'm a failure. And she was perfectly comfortable mocking me to your parents while accepting every dollar I offered. She doesn't think you're worthless. She does, I interrupted. Maybe not consciously. Maybe she's convinced herself she loves me while simultaneously being ashamed of me. But the words she spoke to your parents? Those came from what she really believes. People don't accidentally say things like that. They say what they really think, and then call it a joke when they get caught. Brandon was quiet for a long moment. Then, what would it take? For you to reinstate funding? What would Emma need to do? Nothing, because this isn't about what Emma does. This is about who Emma is. And who she is, at her core, is someone who values appearance over substance, who measures worth by wealth, who thinks love is something you perform for an audience rather than something you actually live. I can't change that. I can't fix that. All I can do is stop enabling it. So that's it? The wedding is just canceled? No. The wedding can still happen. St. Bartholomew's is paid for. Emma can get married in the church with whoever wants to attend. But the reception at Sterling Heights, the 7-course meal and the 12-piece band and the open bar, that was all extras. Expensive extras. If Emma wants those things, she or your family can pay for them. Mr. Holloway, my parents aren't going to pay $50,000 to save a wedding they're not even sure should happen anymore. Then Emma will have a simple wedding instead of an extravagant one. There are worse fates. Brandon stood up, recognizing that this conversation was going nowhere. I don't agree with what you're doing. I think you're punishing Emma way beyond what her comments deserved. But I understand why you're doing it. And for what it's worth, I'm sorry. I'm sorry Emma hurt you. I'm sorry I didn't defend you. And I'm sorry you won't be there to walk your daughter down the aisle today. Who said I won't be there? He looked confused. I just assumed. I'll be at the church for the ceremony. That part was never in question. I'm her father. I'll walk her down the aisle if she wants me to, but I won't be at the reception, and I won't be funding any additional expenses. She can have the wedding, she just can't have the party. Understanding dawned on Brandon's face. This wasn't about ruining Emma's wedding. It was about drawing a line between what I'd provide out of love and what I'd no longer provide out of self-respect. I'll tell her, he said quietly. Thank you for at least being there for the ceremony. After he left, I sat alone in my living room and thought about the day ahead. In a few hours, I'd put on my old Navy suit, the embarrassing one, and I'd drive to St. Bartholomew's. I'd walk my daughter down the aisle. I'd give her away to Brandon, who seemed like a decent enough young man despite his terrible taste in families. And then I'd leave. Before the reception, that wouldn't happen. Before the caterer showed up to an empty ballroom. Before Emma had to face all her guests and explain that the party was canceled because she'd called her father an embarrassing nobody. I'd leave, and I'd let her live with the consequences of her choices. Because that's what love looks like sometimes. Not saving, not rescuing, just stepping back and letting people learn the hard way what they refused to learn any other way. Emma got married that day. The ceremony was beautiful. St. Bartholomew's was a stunning church, and Emma looked radiant despite her swollen red eyes. I walked her down the aisle in my old Navy suit, and when the priest asked, "Who gives this woman to be married?" I said, "Her mother and I do," and I meant it. Then I sat in the front pew and watched my daughter marry Brandon Whitmore, and I felt a complicated mixture of sadness and relief and hope that maybe, someday, she'd understand. There was no reception at Sterling Heights. The Whitmores had withdrawn all financial support, furious at what they viewed as Emma's deception about her background. The caterer had canceled the contract due to non-payment. The venue had refunded their deposit but kept the initial payment. Instead, there was a very small gathering at a local restaurant, the kind of place with reasonable prices and good food, but no crystal chandeliers or 7-course tasting menus. Maybe 40 people attended, family and close friends who actually cared about Emma and Brandon rather than being there for social networking. I heard about it secondhand. I wasn't invited. For 3 months after the wedding, Emma and I didn't speak. She didn't call. I didn't reach out. We existed in silence, separated by pride and hurt and the fundamental incompatibility of our values. Then, on a random Tuesday evening, she showed up at my door. She looked different, thinner, tired, older somehow. She'd cut her hair short, her beautiful long hair that she'd always been so proud of, gone. "Can I come in?" she asked. I let her in. We sat in my living room, the same room where Brandon had sat 6 months earlier, and Emma started talking. "I've been in therapy," she said, "since 2 weeks after the wedding. Brandon insisted, said I needed to work through why I did what I did, why I said what I said. My therapist says I have issues with shame and worth, that I internalized Mom leaving as proof that I wasn't good enough, and I spent my whole life trying to prove I was better than where I came from. Better than you." I didn't say anything, just listened. "I convinced myself you were poor because it made me feel successful by comparison. I convinced myself you were embarrassing because it made me feel sophisticated. I convinced myself you didn't have anything to offer because it made accepting everything you gave me feel like charity I was doing you by accepting rather than gifts you were giving me." She was crying now, but quietly, without the theatrical drama of 6 months ago. "I was wrong about everything. You're not poor, you're not embarrassing, you're not a nobody. You're my father, and you gave me everything, and I repaid you by treating you like you were worthless. And I'm sorry. I'm so, so sorry." "What do you want from me, Emma?" I asked, not unkindly, but genuinely curious. "I want—" She paused, struggling. "I want to know if there's any way back from this, if there's any way I can earn your trust again, your love again." "You never lost my love," I said. "I love you, Emma. I always have. I always will. You're my daughter. But love and trust are different things. Love is unconditional. Trust has to be earned. How do I earn it back? By being someone different than you've been, by treating people, all people, not just me, with respect regardless of their bank account or social status, by valuing substance over appearance, by understanding that generosity is a gift, not an obligation." She nodded, wiping her eyes. "I'm working on it. It's harder than I thought. Everything I believed about success and worth and what matters, it's all wrong. And rebuilding those beliefs from scratch it's really hard, Dad." "I know it is. But if you're willing to do the work, I'm willing to watch you do it. And maybe, eventually, we can find our way back to each other." We talked for 2 more hours that night. Really talked, maybe for the first time since she was a teenager. She told me about her marriage, the struggles she and Brandon were having adjusting to a more modest lifestyle without his parents' financial support, the judgment they were facing from their social circle, the slow, painful process of figuring out who they were without the crutch of wealth and status. I told her about my life, the things I'd been doing in the month since the wedding, the volunteer work I'd started, the relationship I'd begun with a woman from my book club, someone age-appropriate who thought my old Honda was practical rather than embarrassing. When Emma left that night, we hugged. Not the perfunctory hug of the rehearsal dinner, but a real one, the kind of hug a father and daughter should share. "I don't know if I can ever make this right," she said. "You can't make it right," I replied. "What happened, happened, but you can make tomorrow different, and the day after that, and eventually those different tomorrows add up to a different relationship." That was 6 months ago. Since then, Emma and I have had dinner once a month. Just the two of us, at modest restaurants, talking about real things instead of performing for each other. It's not what we had before. We'll never have that innocent father-daughter relationship back. Too much has been said, too much trust has been broken, but it's something. It's a foundation we're building slowly, carefully, honestly. Brandon calls me occasionally, asking for advice about marriage and money and how to build a life that matters. I like him more now than I did at the wedding. He's growing up, learning that wealth isn't character and that social status isn't achievement. The Whitmores never apologized. I didn't expect them to. Some people will go their whole lives believing that worth is measured in dollars and cents, that people who live modestly must be failures, that appearances matter more than reality. I feel sorry for them, but I don't miss them. As for me, I still live in my modest 3-bedroom house. I still drive my Honda Accord, though it's now 8 years old instead of 7. I still wear my Navy suit to formal occasions, though I've added 2 new suits to my wardrobe, not because I needed them, but because I wanted them, and I'm happy. Genuinely, deeply happy, in a way I haven't been since Emma was young, and our relationship was simple and uncomplicated by her need to be someone she wasn't. The wedding that almost happened, the reception that got canceled, the $31,000 catering bill that never got paid, all of it has become family legend. A story that gets told at gatherings, though the moral depends on who's telling it. To some, I'm the cruel father who ruined his daughter's wedding over hurt feelings. To others, I'm the man who finally stood up for himself after years of being treated as a convenient ATM. To Emma, in her more honest moments, I'm the father who loved her enough to let her face consequences instead of saving her from them one more time. I'm probably all three. People are complicated like that. But I know this much. I don't regret canceling that card. I don't regret walking away from that rehearsal dinner. I don't regret drawing a line and saying, this far, no further. Because sometimes the most loving thing you can do is stop enabling someone's worst behavior. Sometimes growth only happens when comfort ends. Sometimes people only learn to value what they have when they lose it. Emma learned. She's still learning. And someday, maybe she'll teach her own children that worth isn't measured by bank accounts, that parents deserve respect not because of what they provide, but because of who they are, that love is something you demonstrate through actions rather than just words. Until then, we're building something new, something honest, something that might not look like the father-daughter relationship we had before, but might be stronger for having been broken and rebuilt. And that old Navy suit? I still wear it, with pride, because it reminds me that I'm not an embarrassing nobody. I'm a father who loved his daughter enough to teach her the hardest lesson of all, that respect matters more than money, and character matters more than appearances. And that's worth more than any wedding reception could ever cost.